Hey everybody, it's Thursday.
And I almost thought that it was Friday. So, welcome to this week's edition of The Night Bite.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And apparently, you think it's a Friday too. No,
It is our Friday.
it is our Friday.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people identify with that
Hey
because
Ryan.
for a lot of people, it is a holiday weekend. So, whether you plan to do things or not, there are a few people that are off work or maybe even planning to hit the water.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think almost everything at this point is water. Are we past all of the ice seasons? If you are still on ice, maybe you're in northern Minnesota, maybe you're all the way up in Canada. And so let us know because I guess I'm really interested now. If anybody is on ice, that would be awesome. But otherwise, I think now the main focus has switched to one of two things, either a river system, if you can get to that. A lot of people, that's a lot of traveling. And I think for all of those other people, it is kind of that path of re-rigging for the season, planning, maybe looking at a map, trying to pick a lake. And the other fun thing is there's a lot of events that are going on this time of the season because it is kind of between seasons. So I know that there was the Muskie School that was just down by Madison area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Capital City Muskie School, right?
Yeah.
They are a fabulous group, so go and check out their Facebook page. And I know
Hey,
that
John.
actually the weekend before that, we went to a Muskie Expo. So not that everything is going to be Muskie related out there. But the fun thing that we found is all of these different things that relate to other species of fishing along the way. So would you believe that we even picked up lures for crappies at a Muskie Expo? And that's just how things go. And it's great networking and really fun to be there talking fishing. So as far as the river systems, I will admit we have not been out there because our local waterways, or I guess where we're halfway between. When I say we're halfway between ice and open water, I'm referring to myself because we have gotten so much snow this past weekend that even if I wanted to launch my boat, I honestly don't know how safe that is at the ramps. And I know that there's people that bring, kitty litter, salt, this, that, whatever, but dumping things by that waterway is just going to muddy things up for later. And so I just am choosing to wait until one more weekend. And actually, I guess I'll have to say 2 weekends because since we are visiting family this weekend, we are going to be maybe fishing some of these little retention ponds around these neighborhoods in Illinois. So that takes a little bit of hopping around and finding where fish are at. But if you have a good tip for that little tiny bodies of water neighborhood fishing, drop that in the comments because I am interested to see how you cover those. But that's something that we've done before. And so we always look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows what the weekend will bring for us.
Yeah, we've just been working on rigging, getting those, for us, getting stuff like stinger hooks tied up and, just jigs painted, jigs tied, some of that stuff, you do throughout the winter. But for us, we're so busy. You got to kind of jam it in there right before the seasons. We're a little bit behind everybody else, but yeah, it's kind of a cool thing to take your fishing off the water, continue to do it, as much as we're maybe not actually fishing, you're continually fishing. You're doing your research, you're keeping up online. Again, I'm going to say it again. You'll hear me say it all the way through spring. We keep our eye on the Wolf River Cam. That's a river system in Wisconsin. It's a great watch. If you guys haven't checked out the Wolf River Cam, go check it out because it's super fun, super addicting. Kids love it. You can just leave it on. And sometimes there's a bunch of fish, sometimes there's nothing, but it's like every once in a while it's like, oh, I see. Oh, it's a leaf. And it's it's a fun time.
Sometimes the Wolf River Cam gives me that FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
But sometimes it helps me to, I guess, curb that because, lately, I think especially he's been doing a lot of fishing right in front of those cameras.
Yeah.
And out of all of the hours that I know have gotten put into that fishing time and on those awesome Wolf River rafts, I think that there's only a certain amount of fish that he has put into the reels as being caught. And so, if it was like 500 fish, I'm running out there. But I think that things are still heating up. And so, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of water that just came through that system, whether that's snow or whether that's rain. And so there is a whole bunch of current that is going to push through those waterways. That's going to get fish moving. water is going to warm up. That is going to get fish moving and a whole bunch of other things, I guess, in that process, because bait are going to start moving and all of that. But we are getting ahead of ourselves when we get that far. So until we get there, that is, I guess, where we stop for today. So if you have a fishing report other than that, let us know what it is. Let us know where you're at. Let us know how the fish are biting or what those fish are, because we're interested. But otherwise, we are so excited to bring our guest onto the show. So Shantell, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Yes, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys having me on here. I'm very excited and grateful too.
Hey, Troy.
Yeah, and we are so excited to have you here tonight. And I think, to be honest, this is our first time. Is it our first time meeting you? To be honest, it might be.
It is actually, yeah. Other than social media, but yeah, first time like actually meeting.
So for people who are also just getting to know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am just a local mom here in Bay City, Michigan, and with a passion for fishing. And I love to just do what I do with my kiddos. That's my favorite part about fishing, is being able to take them out, teach them things, while I'm learning as well. As we were kind of talking, the best part about this fishing world is that we're always learning and evolving. So that's a little bit about me, is just focusing on the fishing with my kiddos.
Well, and I always love when people come on the show and they describe themselves as like such an average person, average fisherman, average angler. Because when you actually look at what goes into all of that, it is actually a lot of adventure. And I think sometimes people forget that, because fishing is a sport that's known to be like quiet and laid back and all of that. But man, if you're catching fish or if you're actually dissecting a body of water, it's not always quite that laid back. And so especially to do that with somebody like a child and, introduce that sport, that is a lot of adventure.
It is. It's a lot of adventure, a lot of teaching, and I think my favorite part too is seeing their excitement of when they get to either catch a new species that they've never caught before. And even just seeing, like Kaiser, my son, the other day was like, Mom, this is a pike. This is, a bluegill. And I'm like, whoa, you do pay attention. So that's part of the adventure too.
No, that is a really funny point. Oh, you pay attention, because so often, you hear people online talk about make the kids put video games down or whatever, get them out onto the ice or the open water. But I think sometimes when they get out there, people expect them to like learn a lot and quickly and like know how to cast and like know how to fish. And that can be a really frustrating process to teach so much at once. And so I love that you're saying, a fish comes up and they're able to identify that. Like all of those little steps in that process are so exciting.
Absolutely. And I love it. And seeing the progress, I started fishing about 3, maybe 4 years ago, like really getting into it, as the years have progressed, and just seeing my children also progress kind of with me, and the knowledge, that they had from in the beginning of when we started fishing from shore, even to now we've advanced to going, and on the big water on the Saginaw Bay, and being able to teach, them how like trolling works versus just casting from shore. So it's a great experience for them to learn as well.
Oh my gosh, I love that you said that, because you almost set it up perfect. The thought that was in my brain. Because what I was going to ask you next, and I know this is a big question, so we'll probably have to revisit it as we talk about it. But how do you go? I mean, okay, let's start somewhere else. This is the time of season where people are excited to get out. And I think especially kids are so excited to get back to the outdoors. And so parents are going to take them, let's go. So then they gather their rods and they get in the car and they don't know where to start. So as far as shore fishing, do you have any tips on where to go or where to start or anything like that?
Absolutely. So the best part about living here around the Saginaw Bay, or being local, I guess, in this area, is we have a lot of different, I wouldn't say bodies of water, but, we have the Saginaw Bay, you've got Quantico, there's, Finn Road. A lot of these, boat launches like Finn Road, for example, is one of my favorites to take the kids, because you can get a lot of your panfish, just a lot of different variations. But so I would highly recommend, Quantico, Finn Road. Also, even just on the Saginaw River, right by Vets Bridge, you'll find a lot of people, totally different age groups of fishing from shore. You can catch your catfish, walleye. There was even a point in time, way back in the day, it's kind of funny, but using a perch rig to catch walleyes, just the advancement of learning and everything like that is just so critical.
It's so funny to like watch you laugh at that, but I think that's what happens is that people go out, especially if you're in these really crowded locations and you see what other people are fishing with. And sometimes as an angler, you like judge that rig or you judge the setup or you judge how they cast it or whatever. But then the key is waiting to see if they get that bite or not, because sometimes people throw out crazy things and they don't catch anything. And then it seems to make sense. And that's okay. Try it. But sometimes people throw out the craziest thing and it's what works that day. And so when you go out to those really crowded places, sometimes that's a really good conversation to have.
Absolutely. Well, and someone said to me, before of, realistically, like a walleye doesn't know if it's a walleye, type lure or a bass lure, so it's those are the kind of differences that they don't know what you're really throwing at them. It's just really more about, the other factors of water temperature, where you're at, what you're fishing for. So it can always, like I said, I've caught walleye on, a perch rig and I'm like, well, that's okay. That's all right. Hey, it works.
That's funny because we just kind of had this conversation. We went Monday or two ago to the MEPS factory. I guess they call it the factory, but it's like all handmade. So don't think like factories like presses and parts. It's like people putting this together like art. But it kind of spurred a conversation and some people online about how like, oh, that's meant to be a trout little rig thing, but that's how I catch my best crappies or my best pike. And it's funny because sometimes people, anglers especially, get stuck in what things are supposed to be, that they forget exactly what you're saying. Forage is forage, whether it's a minnow, whether that's a bug, whether that's just like the flash on the bait that catches their attention. Fish might react similarly. Walleye, bass, crappie, if they're there, they might like it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a really good experience earlier this year. Well, let me back up for a minute. I try to challenge myself to learn new techniques and even new species, right? So I've never, fished for trout. And this year I had a really great opportunity to network with some amazing people with Network Outdoors. And, I met this amazing woman. And so her and I went out on this trout stream and I caught my first literally 11.5-inch brookie. And mind you, I was using a fly fishing rod, never fly fished before ever, but I was using a fly fishing rod that I actually got at a garage sale. And this gentleman, young gentleman, he made all of his own flies. And that's what I was using, and I had somebody on shore that's like, can I see that? That's like vintage. And I kid you not, that is literally, I did not use my brand new one, like brand new fishing rod or fly fishing. I just used the old one. And it was so awesome to be able to kind of take something that's from the past per se, and then implement it and still catch fish on it. I mean, even like the fly fishing line, it was like, you kind of say like not cracked, but it was just not brand new. And it was so awesome to be able to catch my, first brookie on that rod.
That is awesome because, as an angler, if you're in that scenario where you're going to go out, you're hunting for a trophy, whatever, cool, get out that setup. But when you're the kind of person and you're trying something, or you visited a garage sale, or maybe it was in your garage, it was your uncle's, it was whoever's, and it found its way to you, to be able to take that and use that is really gratifying. And it makes me think a lot of when we like make our own tackle, because there's so much satisfaction in something that, I don't know, that you've taken and just like put to use. I don't know. I guess that's a weird way to put that, but I just feel like I really understand what you're saying in your story. And I think it resonates with a lot of people because so many of us have old tackle in the garage and like, I can't use that. I can't use that. Or it's not top of the line. And people get so caught up in what it should be that, there's so many memories out there that they could just be making. That's a really great story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And thank you. And speaking of memories too, I think that is where like my passion and love for fishing comes from, of not just making the memories with my children, Kaiser and Paris, but also just being able to network, like you guys, for example, being able to take this opportunity to network with not just you guys, but other, anglers, whether they're, professional fishermen or whether they're also a single mom like myself that are just trying to learn and get their kids outdoors. So I think the networking aspect too of fishing, I think is so also part of my favorite part of fishing. Is being able to network and meet awesome people and to learn. That's one of my favorite things is learning, because there's never a bad day, or you try to look at it as like there's never a bad day because you're always learning no matter what.
Well, and I think that goes back to fishing with kids in general. That's one of my favorite things about fishing with children is that they have such a fresh, clean outlook on on fishing. And so like they're not stuck in these ruts and they don't have these techniques, and they just go to a tackle box and be like, "Oh, I just want to throw this and I just want to throw this." And it's fun, especially if you fish with them for any number of time or any amount of time, that you can start picking out like things that they use that maybe you would never think of touching, and you know, use it, right? And so
Right.
that's one of the cool things is that not you don't not only can learn yourself, but you can learn from kids that don't even know anything. And
Right.
that's just because they don't have any fear of trial and error and wasting time. They're just fishing. And so getting to fish with anglers like that is always a special time, at least for me. I really enjoy just getting a fresh perspective every once in a while.
Absolutely. And that's like also the best part too of, like you said, a fresh perspective of some people can do something one way and you've never thought about it. So it's also like changing that technique and learning and, being able to utilize something that someone else did that you never would have thought of.
So I am going to do what I said that I was going to do earlier and come back to that very first question, because we're talking about shore fishing, whether that is by yourself, and learning on your own, whether that is bringing somebody new, whether that's young or old or a friend or whoever. We talked about, especially if you're on the river, walleye this time of year, you're not having to cast out to a middle of the lake. Sometimes find those places where those fish are coming for you. So that's awesome. As spring heats up, especially finding those places where the panfish are. So that was a really great tip. And follow as that season goes, because as that water temperature warms up and those different fish are doing different things. And so when you lose one, you might be able to find the other.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, the third thing that I always forget about is trout fishing. So definitely make sure that in your area that, there are trout streams, right? Because that's kind of a specific thing. And so how do you do that? The DNR website, look up trout streams.
Yeah, you can use at least Wisconsin. I'm pretty sure almost every state has different the different trout stream classes.
Yeah.
I know you put me on the spot. So if any of you follow Nicole King, she has something called like Trout Roads or Trout something
Trout
app.
Route? Yeah,
What's
Trout
that?
Route.
Yeah,
Trout
Trout
app?
Route. Yep.
Love that app. Love
Yeah,
it.
so she's told us about that before. I haven't utilized it very much just because I'm super fortunate, and I know that I'm super fortunate to work in the field of water qualities and fisheries, and I do a lot of stream surveys myself, so I know where all the crossings local to us are. I know where all the good spots are. I try not to take advantage of that too much, just because I for one, I love trout, and I love brook trout, and I love lake sturgeon, because
Mm,
those are two things in Wisconsin that I don't think people like. There's big cultures around them, but I don't think the state as a whole, like our culture, props them up as much as we should. They're sensitive fish for one, and they're not all over the place, especially in the Midwest. These are
yeah.
gem fish, and so just for us to have access to both of those species is really cool. And I get all kinds of trout action during the summer because I'm shocking them with the stuff. So we're out on the boat most of the time. But yeah, that Trout Route app, you can go look and see.
I asked you a question. You did a huge roundabout. I was like, we lost the point of this question.
I mean, that's what happens when you
took a side route here. Okay, let's recenter though. But you were talking about the Trout Route app, because that did answer the question. And I think the DNR does have trout streams on their website. So
True.
Look for.
I'm allowed one word answer.
No, I don't mean that either. But you were going on a whole tangent about all kinds of other species and stuff.
That's why I'd only talk once in a while. I'm the king of tangents. That's why people watch the show, to hear me talk nonsense.
That's I guess what we're all doing this whole time, just fishing nonsense. But I mean, we're following kind of this transition. So if maybe like shore fishing isn't for you, right? Because for some people that isn't. And so starting to move towards that boating season. And so you were saying that's something that you do. So whether that's trolling or not. And actually, we have a question here from David, which is great to kick this off.
David from YouTube.
Ooh, asking if you have a favorite color for walleye on the Saginaw River. Saw that you fished the Michigan Walleye Tour, and thank you for the advice. So do you have a favorite go-to color?
So I do. I absolutely love the lure lipstick plastics. I actually do use custom jig heads that are handmade. So I did get a few, actually Ryan, who I see on the chat. So he made a few, and then also too, Doc's Custom Tackle gave me a few jig heads here, which actually I do have a few. These were perfect, 3/8 ounce. And then I like to use, so this was actually the Pimp Daddy. If you can kind of see, I'm not sure. But my favorite one that I used, David, is the Pimp Daddy. That seemed to be a really nice color. Also, too, another big one of my personal favorite, but maybe I'm biased because my favorite color is green. But we also have here from Lure Lipstick. And then this color right here, which is your split tail minnow. And so this is an awesome color as well. And I personally like those two ones. I will say the MWT was a very hard bite. That whole weekend, I mean, I know myself, along with a lot of other phenomenal anglers, I mean, we were able to pre-fish that and be successful. And then come time for the tournament, that river, the weather, it all just kind of flipped. And that water was extremely challenging, you know, to even be successful. A lot of people, which again, congratulations to you guys that are and were successful, because that was phenomenal. It was a very tough bite. So David, I hope that answers your question. Pimp Daddy is probably definitely one of my favorites.
And can you show us that those lures a little bit closer up, because those do look really awesome.
Yeah.
And I love that they are kind of natural colors, because that's something that even if you take that tackle and apply it to other bodies of water, there's a good chance that is going to work in those places as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here's kind of like there's a few different ones in here too. These are my green. I don't know. You can't quite see because of the blurred background. Let me try this here. Way. But you can kind of see here. It's almost like replicates a perch, and it does have like the green with the split tail. Some have the orange split tail as well. But I have found, I mean, there's one day that I was just, even my partner on the boat was like, I'm just going to sit back and let you get them all, because I mean, it was just no more was my line, you know, jigging on the river, the Saginaw River. It was just one after another. So that was one of my favorite ones. But again, Pimp Daddy is always like your old faithful, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And those really do look really perchy. And so I guess like, not that I'm a commercial bait maker, but we make baits here at our house and get kind of artsy and fun with it sometimes. And to get like capture a true perch color, like that's hard to do. So kudos to the person or people who are making those baits, because that is actually really fabulous. And actually Lure Lipstick, it's funny that you bring that up, because there is somebody else that I know that also loves products from that company. So shout out to Brian Claremont, who also does a lot of walleye fishing. And it's funny because, well, I guess let's ask this as a question first. Have you ever used like their scent attractant?
So I was just actually introduced to the scent attraction this year. I typically have not ever used that in the past. I did find it to be helpful. Again, I think it is a lot based on the water, you know, the water clarity, the temperature even, because there were some days that I found that to be extremely successful. And then there was other days that it's like, it almost didn't matter. You know, so it's kind of one of those, but I do highly, you know, recommend it. A lot of people swear by it. You know, during the MWT weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I would kind of do a mix. Sometimes I'd have it, sometimes I wouldn't. Again, with that kind of hard bite that it was that weekend, it was almost like trying to rattle your brain and figure out what they want. What are they looking for? What are they going to even bite at? You know, so it was definitely challenging for sure. Oh, and I just got to say a quick hi, because I see, hi, Mom. So hi, babies.
But it's funny I asked about that because I was actually in a boat with who I talked about before, Brian Claremont, and it was a part of the evening that there was a tough bite, and it was just not happening. And he's like, "Oh, just put on the lure lipstick," and we're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And so lo and behold, Real Baits and whatever, and put that on, and I kid you not. It's like somebody flipped a switch and the bite started. And I'm not that kind of person to like I don't die for like live bait. I use plastics. I can't keep things alive, and so that's the thing is like I just use plastics and stuff like that. And I don't need attractant or whatever. But that instance alone, it like made the difference. And it really kind of changed my mind, or I guess opened it at least to using that. So shout out to Lure lipstick because it's also comes in like actually it looks a lot like lip balm. Like
it does.
Lip balm. And it's easy to put on. Like whatever bait you're using, you just like put it right on there.
It's easy to mix up with chapstick too. So be
careful.
careful.
I was just gonna say I was looking at where I had it and I went to reach for it. I'm like, whoa, not my chapstick. Nope.
That is so funny. So this time of the year, people tend to know where to look for walleyes because they all seem to be moving in kind of similar directions. As we push out to summer, is that when you kind of start the trolling bite, or what does that look like?
So for me right now, I mean, the river, I haven't been out on the river just because with Michigan, I mean, we call it Mother Nature for a reason. The Michigan weather has been so windy. Even that weekend was windy. So I haven't been back out on the river since the MWT. However, when it comes to trolling, as the water temperatures, even warm up a little bit and we get some of these, more of your decent, southwest winds, that's when I would try to go on the bay, and right now there are people that have gone on the bay and I see that they're slamming them. And so I think right now we're in a mix with the Saginaw Bay versus the Saginaw River of we're getting some post-spawn and pre-spawn into the river, and they're kind of all progressing and going down that route, but then they're still able to maintain them and get some big fish into the bay. So yeah, I would say like this time of year, I'd probably still stick into the river for a little bit longer. And then as it warms up, I would definitely get into the bay as well.
And, I think that there's always kind of like local fish populations in any of those places. So, especially when you're talking about like the mouth of the river and the fish that go in and out, I mean, that's kind of a popular spot for fish. I don't want to say all year round because, you can't blanket statement quite that much. But, we were talking earlier that if you are looking to get out and maybe you are a shore fisherman or maybe you're a boater and you don't know where to start, sometimes those can be really great places to start.
Absolutely. Especially when, you get some like, flats. I know on the Saginaw River, a lot of people were very successful in shallow water, which again, because this time of year, and I agree. I see that Ryan even stated that, the fish are confused because I mean, I really do believe with this crazy weather we've had, and not just here in Michigan, but I can imagine over by you guys too. It's so crazy right now of this weather. And I do feel like the fish, are kind of getting off on their typical pattern because of the weather. And, that does change for spawning and all of that as well. But yeah, absolutely. Going by the mouth of the river is a very big hot spot, especially in that shallow water right now as well.
Well, and something that actually we were talking about the other day that you really kind of opened my eyes to is that, and I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, but that there isn't that much flow. And so what we've been hearing all spring is like, oh, water levels are down. And we don't hear the flow is low because everybody likes that it's not too difficult to jig in, right? When the flow is really hard, it's hard to get to those fish. You have to use bigger jigs. And then are they going to bite that and all of that kind of stuff, right? But everyone's like, oh, water's low, water's low. Now, at this point where we are in Wisconsin, we had gotten a little bit of snow and then a lot of snow and then a lot of rain. And so the funny thing is like all the snow is melting and this rain is pushing through. And so all of this water is about to start pushing through the system. And I'm not going to say it's going to bring it right back up to where it needs to be. We're not at like spring flood stage, right? It's not like some years, but I think that's one of those things that's going to help get, especially the walleyes and the rivers moving and getting to those spawning places, because right now, otherwise the river is pretty slow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know we had rain, I forget if it was like a few days ago, but we were really kind of hoping that rain was going to start pushing some of those walleye, in from the bay and, send them down the river. So again, it's, and here in Michigan too, we also had, unfortunately, a lot of those dams that had broke. And that was, I think, a few years ago. And after that happened, I mean, there was a big significant change here in the Saginaw River as far as the amount of current that we have. So I think a lot of anglers are also dealing with that and trying to adjust of the difference now with those dams that aren't even currently, being utilized or even in functioning condition. So that's also kind of put a damper, I think, too, on the Saginaw River as well. Because that was a big domino effect. Absolutely.
Hmm. So did it make the flow faster or slower? I'm trying to understand this dam. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, it's you guys will have to Google it when we get off of this. But yeah, absolutely. So it kind of like slowed down the current. So there's a very different current as well. And a lot of people have also explained that to me. But yeah, I think that's kind of also been a part of the reason too why, depending on the weather, the bite has been a little harder in the Saginaw River. So, but again, fishing, that's the beauty of it, is you just got to kind of figure out and, kind of utilize the tools that you do have.
Well, and it's interesting because here in Wisconsin, we hear a bunch of people complaining about like, oh, water levels in the Winnebago system, the river, the lake, here, there, whatever. And on one hand, it's terrible that somebody's out there controlling that, but on the other hand, what is worse is when somebody isn't able to control that. So interesting situation that you guys are going through up there, and we will have to read a little bit about that because that is definitely something that is going to affect the fishing and what the fish are doing. So really, really super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's broken, rip it out. I hate dams. I hate dams so much. And that stems from my background in natural resources, right? So in a perfect world, we would have no impediment to aquatic organism movement. And that's not only detrimental to fish populations, because even though you have the same species of fish on both sides of the dam, you might be separating genetics. And so what you're doing is creating bottlenecks of genetics, and that introduces susceptibility to disease and all kinds of other weird things that happen when those populations can't mix. And so that's not only detrimental to fish, but to amphibians, reptiles, and insects, all kinds of stuff. And so there's all kinds of money out there. If you live in a community, granted, where you're talking, it's a rather larger community than what I'm talking about. But if you live in a small community with municipal dam that is needing a repair or just not functioning like you're talking about, go talk to the people on the board. There's plenty of money to get it ripped out. And you'd be amazed at what's under some of those. Around us, they call them mill ponds because they used to have mills on them. They floated logs down. They'd sit in the lake, and then they'd mill the lumber. That's not going on in many places anymore. And so if we can connect this stuff, it'll make all of our fishing way better. And so if it's broken, take it out. It's a lot cheaper to just take it out and fix it. There's my rant. My second.
And it looks like Ryan is giving a little bit of information about the Saginaw River, and I cannot say the name of this other river. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's not that I'm not going to try, but that's long.
Tibbetawasi.
The information is there for you to read for your reading pleasure.
Yeah, so the Tibbetawasi, yes. So that's the one. It has what he's stating is that it has no flow because it wasn't just one dam that broke. And I don't want to get too far off topic, but it wasn't just one dam. It was a domino effect of dams that had busted. And you guys it's actually a very unfortunate tragedy, but you guys will definitely have to look into that and kind of see. But yes, it's certainly, hi, Matthew. Hi there. Thank you for watching and coming on here. So, but yeah, I mean, you guys will have to look into it for sure. Oh, good question.
We'll definitely look into it. I guess we can ask this question maybe a little bit differently. Do you have forward facing sonar? Do you have thoughts that you want to share on them? David is asking if you think it's ruined the sport.
Well,
So
asking everybody, I think.
Yeah, everybody.
Yes. I was going to say, anybody else chime in, please do, because I currently do not have forward-facing sonar on the boat. However, that is my next investment. So I have watched a lot of videos in regards to it. I've talked to other, very great anglers that also have that. And I do know that is a huge key component for fishing. I think that's a very, I hate to say but it's a very tough topic, I guess, if you will, because some people don't think it has really, ruined the sport. And then, some people find it very beneficial. Other people do believe that it has, given some anglers advantages, especially in tournaments, an advantage of someone who doesn't have the forward facing sonar. So that's kind of a topic that if anyone else wants to chime in, go for it.
And I've read a lot of actually articles and stuff both ways because there is a whole lot of information about this getting put out online right now. But what's actually one of the funny things is recently I joined a Facebook group for LiveScope because I don't know, I figured if people are going to ask these questions and stuff, learn about it, find out what are the questions, what are the things, just start being a part of those communities and learn about it. And I just am amazed because here's this. From the outside, people are like, oh, anybody with a live unit, they're just catching fish, as many fish as they want. They're taking home limits every day, multiple limits. I'm going overboard, but because there are some people out there that truly think along those lines, right?
Absolutely.
I have learned in joining these LiveScope forums, the number of people that have these units and are not catching fish. And I'm totally shocked by that. The number of people that are so frustrated that they're willing to come to the forum and admit, I can't get a fish. I can mark them all day long and it's still not working. And so I guess I was one of those people who was really concerned, like, wow, if you have a live scope, if you have a live unit, wow, you're going to catch all the fish always. And I guess I didn't realize that wasn't always the case. So kind of a cool thing to open my eyes to lately.
Yeah, I think my opinion would be that I don't think it's ruined the sport. I think that maybe there's people that can ruin the sport for others. If that makes sense, David. Like I don't think it's going to ruin the sport entirely, right? Because here's the deal is that we went from not having anything in the 60s to having flashers, and then sonar's been on the ocean forever, and then it came to freshwater, and then we had 2D sonar, and then now you have the digital screen that's black and white little fish, and then it goes every time there's a fish, and then you shut it off.
Wait, do
that again. Do that again.
So then we transitioned over to the side imaging and down imaging, and we had different frequencies and advancements in transducers, and so now you have a super accurate like bait separation and like you can see super far out, and now all we've done is put all of that technology into a transducer that allows you to view stuff in real time. So it's more a processor advancement than it is actual technology. I feel like there's technology advancement in it, but I mean, as far as like utilization, it's just another direction because you had you had out to the sides and you had down, and now you have forward. And I think, in my opinion, we have talked a lot in our office about this. We don't have a whole lot of bodies of water that are going to be super affected by this, but my whole office is full of sportsmen, and so we talk about this. And one thing that's brought up is that, well, maybe people that are decent fishermen will get their limit more often, and so that could affect fish populations. And it's like, yeah, I think I can get that, but I think also technology drives regulations, and so I think that is, as long as we are respectful as anglers to the resource, we follow the rules, I don't think it's going to change that much. If people start, if they see a dramatic change, we're going to see a little bit of a change. And honestly, the only thing that regulations do is make you fish more. Right? If you're bringing fish home to eat, And instead of going out once a week, you might have to go out 3 times a week to bring home the same amount of fish.
I have to fish more.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're going to complain about having to fish more, I feel bad if you're in a very tight situation and that's like your only means of sustenance. But if you're just doing it to have to stock up for a fish fry party or whatever, hey, I'll play the smallest violin for you because you have to go out and go fishing more so you can have a party. You know, that's just my view on it. I don't think necessarily it's always going to be a bad and a good thing. I think it'll settle in, it'll find its place. The hype will
That's
go
what
down
I was going to ask. I'm
eventually,
going to cut you off because I was going to ask, do you think
Yeah.
the novelty ever is going to wear off?
Yeah, I think so because as long as people are spending money on the sport, there's always going to be something better that comes out. And so whether that's a new you're already seeing it.
Yeah.
We're on the 3rd different transducer now for this unit, and people just dump it and buy the new one. And like, I'm very surprised that they've made this technology so modular like that. Like, they didn't make you buy a whole new thing, but a new transducer is $1,000. So it's like,
Absolutely.
they're doing a really good job at just finding the edge where people are like, yeah, I'll still spend money on it, but like, it's not all the time. So yeah, I think the novelty will wear off. I think it'll just kind of meld into stuff. I think you'll see a lot of backtracking, going back to some of the side view and some of the down imaging stuff. I think it's just a little bit less hassle for those
Mhm.
people that are in tournaments. I think that you'll see I think that there's probably a change on the horizon, like getting rid of the sonars in tournament, but for pre-fishing, I'm
Right.
guessing they're going to still allow that. And so I think people that are in competitive sports are going to still hold on to this. I think my viewpoint is it's a great tool for kids because nowadays life is going so fast. There's so
Absolutely.
much going on and stuff is just getting blasted and blasted and blasted. And fishing is not a quick sport. Neither is hunting. And so when you can bring something that has an instant gratification like live sonar, you're not catching fish, you can see it, like an aquaview
Right.
camera. You're not catching fish, you can see them. When you can bring that into that situation and help kids stay there until you do catch a fish, I think that's beneficial to the sport's future. So, there's some nuggets to think about in there, I guess.
That's actually a great perspective, Josh. I honestly didn't think about that, but that makes sense because, Kaiser being 8, there's been times I've taken him out on the boat, and when your planter boards are going off and he's catching the fish, he's all into it. And then it's like when you hit that like mid-afternoon bite, and then he's like, Mom, what do I do? I'm like, you look at the board. I was like, so I think having that technology, like you said, that's actually a great perspective I've never thought of too. But again,
Well,
this
and
is
I
like,
think
yeah.
Well, oh,
Go
sorry
ahead.
to cut you off, but I think kids are less apt to feel like they're going to break something, or maybe not break, but do something in the computer that's going to make it so you can't get back to where you were. And so
Right.
when kids are able to mess around with it, when you're on a midday bite and you're like, hey, take the live scope, go scan in front of the boat and find some fish. They can learn all the settings, they can learn how it works, and then they might be able to even teach you,
Absolutely.
because they're not going into it with any kind of pre-training on anything else besides that. And so, that might be a benefit to you when you don't have time, when you're rigging lines and when you're setting planer boards and when you're doing all kinds of, however you're fishing, they can be running the live scope, and then you can be like, hey, tell me how to do that. And
Absolutely.
they probably can, because they're really good. A lot of kids are really good at that, especially because they have time to play around with it.
Absolutely. Well, I think too, like I kind of want to go back to the kid, or children aspect of this is, I think that is such a critical thing right now for all of us as anglers too, is to keep this, generational situation going of teaching our children or grandchildren or whomever and encouraging children to get outdoors. Because I mean, to be brutally honest, side note, I went to my son's classroom and the teacher's like, hey, Kaiser, you forgot to pick, your lunch. And so he comes to the touch screen and picks his lunch. I'm like, what? So I think being able to get our children outside hunting. I mean, my little man is also my hunting partner. I teach him, I'm learning more about hunting as well. So I think being able to keep these children so active in what they see as a role model, whether it's you guys, whether it's their mother or whomever, I think that is such a critical aspect of this fishing industry and even hunting as well, of continuing to get these little people out and get them outdoors and show them what we've learned. And to me, that is, again, it kind of goes back to, about Shantell, is this is why I do this, is because, it's not just for the children, but doing the Michigan Walleye Tournament, this is my first year. I am learning so much, and I'm so grateful for that. And being able to network with a lot of phenomenal anglers as well is so critical. And that's also, like I said before, part of my favorite part of this and doing the tournaments. But my biggest goal with doing tournament fishing right now, and hopefully in the next years as well, is to be able to teach both my children that the sky's the limit. With honesty and being humble and dedication, we can do anything we put our minds to, and being a single mother and being able to teach my children this so much is what drives me to be able to, as you said, to be successful in the water. Like, that is what drives me to learn new techniques, because I'm not just learning this for me. I'm actually learning this to be able to teach my children, what they can hopefully one day teach their own children and be able to pass this on for generations and generations. And that is truly what is the biggest, why behind why I do this and doing the Michigan Walleye Tournament. So that's sorry to go on the kids spiel, but it's the truth.
Good. No, I think that's so good. Excuse me. I think it's so important, just because there are so many youth that don't have the opportunity to be out in the outdoors. They don't have parents or whoever who had that experience themselves, to be honest. And it's unfortunate, because the thing about fishing is, and kind of funny, we almost talked about this before, people expect fishing to be so relaxing. But that's the thing, is it is an adventure. Gosh, I feel like this is coming full circle at this moment. But that's the thing, is because if you are the kind of person, and Josh and I, we're going to go out and we're going to fish for bluegills, like, fine, no problem. Okay. Because you can put like a hook and a this and a that and whatever, and I can come up with, I don't know, probably 10 different rigs that'll catch a bluegill in whatever depth, right? But when you have those people who don't have those experiences, they don't know how to set that up. And even just something as simple as like tying the hook to the end of the line, they're like, oh my God, am I doing this right? And Absolutely. So to give somebody that experience and show them, like, sure, you can do it this way or that way or that way, figure out what does work, to have somebody kind of give them that permission to explore that. I think that's what it takes. And so I think it's worthwhile to be passionate about.
Absolutely. And again, to see, like I said before, a little bit of just not just learning, but exactly what you said, Emily, but to see them light up when they catch the fish. I mean, that is right there of like, that was perfect. It's like, whether it's even the wrong species, us as adults, we might look at it as like, that's what we're targeting. But, when you have these little people around and, your kiddos, it's just phenomenal to see them light up and be able to experience the love that you feel for fishing and hunting, Well,
and that reminds me, back in the beginning, and we were talking about the trout fishing, and you were sharing how some of that is new to you, or the learning experience of it and all that goes into it. But, that is the cool thing for somebody even specifically like you, is to, go out there, have something new, challenge yourself, but then to also be able to bring that back to the kids or their friends or whoever it is, bring a whole slew of them out there to the river, and they can figure it out too. But then that first time that somebody catches that fish and they are just as excited as you are, I mean, it's almost like winning twice. You like learn something and caught somebody else. Like, it is so, so cool.
Absolutely. Well, and even having one of Kaiser's birthdays, it was like 2 years ago, right by the Saginaw River, and him and his friends, and we had a bunch of fishing poles, and I kid you not, these little kids are over here fishing from shore, and it's like, that is just so amazing, and again, to be able to teach them and I mean, it's to the point where my little man will go with me to Frank's Great Outdoors. He's like, Mom, no more in the cart. I'm like, okay. Like, but they get to experience that love and that excitement with us. And I just think that's like a huge part of this, drive for me when it comes to fishing. And, even Kaiser wanting and coming to me saying, Mom, I want to create a business to get little people outside and women and encourage them. And I was like, that's great, buddy. So currently right now we're working on that. It's Mirror Outdoors, but that's still in the works. So nothing right now, but I love seeing that my passion is now kind of trickling down to him as well and be able to see what he wants to do with this community and this fishing community, which is so critical and important.
Mm-hmm.
That is so important. It makes me think of somebody that we ran into at the expos, Jack's Tackle.
Yeah.
And so now, gosh, how old is Jack? I mean, he's still pretty young. But we met him and he's this tiny little kid and he's super shy and he's speaking so quiet, but he was taught at some point how to make tackle, and it's like legit. It's not just like a kid tackle. It's like legit jigs and spinners. And I don't even know
awesome.
all kinds of things now. But he is a true youth and he started doing this to save to college or whatever his future is or whatever he's doing with it. But it is so cool to be able to encourage those youth, because that right there, the next up and coming jig maker or the next up and coming, he's the inventor of whatever the next, I don't know, whatever the new cool thing is, and so to get those ideas to still keep pushing the industry, that is so cool.
It is, absolutely.
So I have to ask, as spring continues to draw closer, do you have fun plans for whether that's you or for the kids coming up?
So I do. Right now, we are actually getting ready to start our, quote unquote pre-fishing. And Kaiser's birthday is going to be here in May, which I know feels like forever, but it's just right around the corner. So he's already asking me, Mom, when can we go fishing for my birthday? So spring is baseball season. We're a big baseball fan or baseball family. I play softball as well. Little man plays baseball. I'm one of the coaches. So that's our spring plans right now, is just kind of getting ready for some fishing, and then baseball world takes over as well.
That's awesome. But it sounds like there is fishing time in there. So that is awesome.
Absolutely. And then once his season's done, it's going to be perfect timing for right around when we're going to start prepping for the Michigan Walleye tournament for the next event, which is going to be in Au Gres. So we're kind of prepping for that. And then we have the Alpina event after that as well.
And how many events are there in the season?
So there's 4 total for the Michigan Walleye Tour. The Detroit River one is actually going to be coming up here at the beginning of April. I am not participating in that event because it's kind of cool to say this, but the registration filled up beyond quickly. So I did not get in the registration for that one, but I am going to be participating in the Au Gres, which is going to be in June, and then the Alpina one that's going to be in July. So there's 4 total.
That's super cool. And we are definitely looking forward to following along on all of those adventures. So if people here are looking to do that, where could they follow along with you?
So you guys can go ahead if you want. Shantell Moore Outdoors is something that I'm posting like my updates. You guys can follow along, or anyone can follow along for that one on Shantell Moore Outdoors. And then also I do post a lot on my personal Facebook, which is Shantell Moore.
Perfect.
Oh, and you can go to the Michigan Walleye Tour website as well to see like the lineups and all the teams and the performance as well.
That's awesome.
In the championship, Frank.
In the championship, yeah.
I can't forget that part. That's the most important part.
Yeah, the most exciting. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening to talk about all of this.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you guys again. It was so great to be able to meet you guys kind of in person, for the first time. And thank you for having me. I'm very grateful. And it's been awesome to be able to connect with you and network.
Yeah. And I know that we'll do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And to everybody at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because that is always a big part of the fun. And to anybody who didn't get to join us this evening, we'll see you next Thursday on next week's edition of The Night Bite.
Night, everybody.